Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting. I want to start off by having the informational meeting about the town's purchase, and I will ask Bill Helm to speak.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. And I'm going to be very precise about what I say here because the timeline's important. At approximately noon last Thursday, January 19th, the Selectmen received the appraisal requested in November for the so-called Bewley land. The 7+ acre parcel that we have been considering for purchase as a site for a new police facility was appraised in the new appraisal at $150,000, well below the tentative agreement we had with the owner to purchase the property for $375,000. On Monday, January 23rd, the Selectmen met in a non-public session to discuss the disparity between the appraised value and the agreed upon price and to review the town's negotiating position with the seller. The owner of the seller, Joe Hogan, was contacted by a conference call during which the new information was discussed, and the Selectmen indicated that the town could not proceed with a town meeting warrant article requesting $375,000, but would like to proceed with an article requesting the appraised value $150,000 if Mr. Hogan would agree to accepting the lesser amount. Remember, a real estate transaction requires a willing buyer and a willing seller. Mr. Hogan responded that he felt he had alternatives for realizing the $375,000 value and therefore would not agree with the town's revised proposal. The Selectmen then informed Mr. Hogan that if upon further consideration prior to February 8th, the date of the budget hearing for all monies appropriated to be appropriated for the town at the town meeting, the board would be willing to present the $150,000 purchase to the voters. Following the conversation with Mr. Hogan, the Selectmen voted unanimously to not pursue the purchase of the subject property unless the seller was willing to accept $150,000. So at this point, the purchase of the property is off the table.
Questions, comments? John Wilson, wait for the mic.
Yeah,
Sorry.
John Wilson, what happened to the other two pieces? Did he sell those to someone else or has agreement with someone else or?
The other two parcels we understand, and he reiterated on January 23rd, he has a buyer for. They were appraised respectively at $100,000 and $128,000. And he has told us he has prospective buyers for those two parcels and believes he also has a buyer who will give him the $375,000 for the larger parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Will has to get over there. It's good for his Fitbit steps.
There you go. Who's the listing agent?
Stefan Timbrell is the listing agent, or was at the last, he mentioned his name during the telephone conference call, so I believe must still be.
Thank you. Emily Cobb, Police Chief. I just want to say on behalf of the police department, I'd like to thank the board and the citizens for all your hard work, your thoughtfulness in this process so far, your careful consideration, your comments. And again, on behalf of the police department, I look forward to continuing on this journey, hopefully to find the right solution for the town of New London. And I just wanted to express my appreciation to the board and to the people. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Anyone else? Over. Adam's coming.
I was just
Oh,
curious.
excuse me. Can I just remind folks to state your name?
Elizabeth Stevens.
Thank you.
I was curious whether the person who did the appraisal had any particular reasons for that amount, like whether they provided any descriptions of the property that were informative.
All appraisers provide information that that tells the person who they're providing the appraisal to why they arrived at that particular number. In the case of this property, they used one of several options for valuing it. This was a comparative sales analysis, and they used 3 other sales of undeveloped land in the town of New London as the basis for the proposal. Otherwise, they did not feel that that they did not comment on anything to do with the contours of the land or the wetlands or any of the things that had been in the earlier appraisal. That was simply, these are the three comps, and this is what we think the value is.
And I presume that the realtor, the intermediate, the Joe Hogan, did not provide any indication of who was interested in any of the 3 parcels.
No, and probably not our business.
Be interested
Yeah.
to know, though.
But we'll all find out soon enough.
One more comment. Yep, Nancy.
Are you going to
Nancy,
pursue,
identify yourself.
sorry,
please.
Nancy
Thank you.
Marascio,
Thank you.
are you going to pursue the second choice that the study committee gave you?
Selectmen have not talked about doing that. We decided not to pursue that one earlier. I suppose at some point we might consider it, but certainly we're not pursuing anything in conjunction with the current plans for town meeting. And as the chief just said, we'll probably all regroup at some point and figure out how we continue. This is a discussion that's been going on for some 5 years, so it's nothing new. You have to be patient in municipal business.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing no one raising their hand, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Waste Reduction Committee. Maureen, is this your?
I'm Maureen Prohl, and I'm reporting on behalf of the Waste Reduction Committee. I've been asked to update the Board of Selectmen on the Waste Reduction
Maureen,
Committee.
excuse me, do you want to come up front so that people can see you? Since you're doing a presentation, or no, you don't want to come up front? Okay. Don't be shy.
How's this?
Very good. Thanks, Maureen.
So I've been asked to update the Board of Selectmen on our first initiative, the composting pilot program, and also other endeavors that this committee has been undertaking in the last 6 months now. The update on the composting pilot program, it pretty much runs on its own, I'm happy to say. And at the 14-week mark, which was on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, 20 households have diverted 1.7 tons of food scraps from the waste stream. It's pretty impressive, I think. With that in mind, the committee would like to have phase 2 of the pilot program, or actually be phase 2 of a composting program. And that would entail increasing the number of New London households involved from 20 households to 160 households, which is 10% of the households in our town. So with that in mind, we have written a warrant article, which reads as follows: to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,000 for the purpose of a waste reduction program and education, and authorize this amount from the June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance for this purpose. The cost of that, the $12,000, comes from not only educational events for different areas, different levels of the community, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but also the cost of picking up an additional number of 64-gallon what they call totes. They're just like large garbage cans on wheels. And also the cost of giving buckets to the households that are involved. And it would be 160 households. Are there any questions on that so far? Okay. Are you ready? So
Maureen, who's Maureen?
I'm, yes, Maureen. Yes, Maureen.
Maureen, wait for the microphone and please identify yourself for the recording.
Maureen Strawn.
Thank you.
Do you, when you say 160, so you've already surveyed and you do have that many that will participate?
We don't know how many we'll have. We just
Okay.
increased it to 160.
Yeah.
Because it's 10% and we want to phase it in.
Okay.
Because we've heard that a lot of people would like to be involved and are a little bit irritated that they can't be. So we're hoping that, I don't think 160 households will sign up right away. But I think that over a year's time, we definitely, I mean, it's my hope, maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I hope that it will get to 160 households.
I think it sounds really good so far at the tonnage that you've been able to
Divert.
redirect. I guess.
Yes.
Now,
redirect.
tell me, do people, I have a compactor in my backyard, composter, I guess.
Mhm.
Should people like me be going into this program? Is it better served or what?
Well, everybody on the waste reduction committee has backyard composting and none of us are involved in this program because we want to open it up to people
Who
who
don't do
are,
that?
who don't do it.
Okay, I got you.
So the answer is no, Maureen.
Okay.
You have to
Maureen.
continue doing
Thank
what
you.
you're doing already until if it gets burdensome. I know that one person in the program said, you know, I am so happy not have to trudge out to my compost pile
In the
in the
winter.
middle of winter.
Yeah. Mm.
You know, so people join it for different reasons. I think people who live in congregate living places are really happy with it because they don't really have an opportunity to dispose of their food scraps.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you're welcome. Are there any other questions? The next, in November, we started turning our attention to education of the New London residents about other materials to be diverted from the waste stream. And so we started off meeting with the transfer station employees, and they gave us a couple of good ideas. One of them is there some way that you can change the signage because people don't read the signs here. And another recommendation was for Kenny Waldo gave this a recommendation. Is there some way that you can get people to read the transfer station website and find out what kinds of materials we take here or not? And there were a couple of other recommendations, like, can you get people to please clean out their recyclables because they can pollute a whole load of recyclables by throwing dirty recyclables in our recycling cans. So that was helpful. And so we took their recommendations under advisement, and we started by setting up a logo on the town's homepage that kind of pops so that people can click on that. They're both the same. So that takes you to the our website, which is a number of sustainable, it's a sustainable disposal chart that tells you where you can take items if you can't take them to the transfer station. That's what this is mostly about. Although we do have things that you can take to the transfer station in New London, for instance, the textiles and clothing. And there's a whole list of things you can take to New London. But if you're going somewhere else, there's other places that you can take items in other towns that are within about 30 minutes from New London. And if you could just click on the links there, it'll take you right to the website. And so you can get the hours of that particular place and how to get there, etc. The other thing, if you scroll down, the other thing that we put on this website is the top 10 trash tips. And as you can see, the first one is rinse your cans and bottles. No food scraps. The other thing is that we put on this website, on our webpage, is to join with friends and neighbors for styrofoam collection days in Hanover and Lebanon. So we hope to, if there's a material that we don't collect here in our town, we're hoping that if we post it on this webpage, somehow if we can get people to go to this webpage, they will know what they can do with other kinds of materials that we don't actually take at our transfer station. We also have at the top of this page, we have linked to the transfer station, because some people, they have also, can you actually link there? This New London transfer station link. So people can go to that transfer link, and if you scroll down, you'll see that Nancy Barthol, there's all your electronic waste. And further down, you'll see all of the things that we do take at our transfer station, some of which people really didn't know about. I mean, some of us didn't know about it, actually. So then the next thing we did was the QR code reader. To act on Kenny's recommendation, we set up Kenny thought that we should enclose a pamphlet in the car registration. When somebody registers their car, they would pick up a pamphlet about recycling in New London. But we don't have any money as a committee, so we decided to do it in a cheaper way. And the way we did it is we have a half-page flyer, which might be a card, and people can go on their smartphones and link directly to the transfer station or our webpage to find out where they can divert various items from the waste stream. The other kinds of things that we are really focusing on now are educational opportunities for the town. We're seeking grants to expand the educational opportunities that we can offer to town residents. And we've kind of narrowed it down to 2 different grant programs. We're also developing plans for 2 educational events in town. One would be for the elementary school, well, not elementary only, elementary middle school students. We've submitted a proposal to the Kearsarge School District about having an event around Earth Day. We haven't heard back from them. And the second event would be something hopefully at the library, where we can gather people for kind of a seminar where we would have speakers from like Northeast Resource Recovery Association, et cetera, come and talk to us about recycling. Lastly, we've reached out to New London Hospital and Colby Sawyer College have attended our meetings to talk about how we might make some connections with other large organizations in our town who deal with a lot of food waste. And we've also we're trying to very hard, and it's not that hard really, because Karen Ebel lives in town and is in charge of the solid waste working group. So she keeps us abreast of what's going on at the state level, and they are developing plans for municipalities to divert waste from the waste stream. And so she's kept us abreast of those laws that have been put out, and we've had testimony from 2 of our members in just this week in Concord, testifying in support of the House Bill 464 or 2 about prioritizing compost food scrap waste under the new DES waste plan. So prioritizing food scrap, which are the heaviest parts of our food waste, of our waste stream, prioritizing that for funding. Of course, then it has to go to the Finance Committee to get funded, but that's where we are, and those are our activities.
Thank you, Maureen. Maureen, can you identify who else is on your committee? Because you have been
Yes.
working very hard.
I'd love to. I can do it off the top of my head. Jerry Coogan. Jerry Coogan is the grant guy, and the New London Hospital and Plastics and Colby Sawyer College, making connections. Jerry is our making connections person. Liz Meller has been very involved with, she's the chair of our committee, and she is very involved with signage. Joy Cubitt is another member of our committee, and she is very involved in styrofoam and plastics, single-use plastics especially. I think that's it, right? Jerry Gold, oh, he's our secretary, and he is really on top of things. Jerry is involved in everything. He just like keeps us all on the same page, wouldn't you say?
So Maureen, I've got to remind my colleagues that I got this thing started back in March, and you all have done a fantastic job. I enjoy, for the purpose of the audience, sitting with all of you every 2 weeks and so on. I just want to make sure that I'll show this to the committee next week, but the Boston Globe on Sunday in their magazine section had a major article on the problem of landfills in New England, making the point that we're just about out of capacity. So what we're doing is really quite important here, because we're trying to make our small contribution and be a beacon for other communities to
Yeah.
do that also. And starting with the food scraps is a very important thing to do. But basically, New Hampshire has been the home for landfill deposits for Massachusetts for a number of years, and we're running out of space at our place up in Berlin, and they're about to try to Casella's about trying to open another landfill up there. We need to be conscious of what we're doing to our environment with continuing to fill up.
Right.
So thank you
Right.
for all that you and the committee are doing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, now we're going to move on to the item with the Budget Committee, and I'd like to invite members of the Budget Committee to come up and sit with us if you so desire. Chris? Oh, we could do, yeah, we could do, we're going to move on to another item relative to new business. So we're going to discuss. Okay, take it back. Very good. Come on up. Come on down. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so the purpose of this sort of joint session is to go over the list of charts that are on the budget reconciliation sheet that I believe each of you have received. Is that correct? Hannah? Yeah, we're all good. Lynn, you want to start us off? Thank you.
Okay, so there's just a few items that we, Budget Committee and Board of Selectmen actually went over separately real quick the other meeting, and we just want to highlight them and make sure that everybody remembers that what we've done with each item. One is adding the finance budget software. That was for $25,000 for an increase to that line item. The next one would be the police department computer replacement that for $3,500 was removed, that was brought down to zero. Fire department uniforms and safety equipment. Jay reduced that line item by $6,400, which brought it down to $14,100. Transfer station waste disposal, that went down by $32,000 to bring it down to $130,000 when we got our rates for that. And rec department, we increased that by $9,966, bringing it up to $11,966 from the original $2,000 for Halloween costs. So those are those items that have already been addressed by Select Board and Budget Committee. There are two items that were not, I don't think were. If there's any-
Understanding that
Lindsay?
those are all set?
Sorry, real quick. To my understanding, when the budget committee reviewed some of these things, the budget software and the recreation special events were not then approved by the Board of Selectmen.
We
You
did
guys-
so at the subsequent meeting though, after that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Now
Sure.
we're all
You all good?
good?
Okay, so there are two items that change that were not addressed. The police department, Chief Cobb has reduced her overtime wages by $1,000. So that brings that line item down to 49,000. And I think that was because hospital days, triathlon, they don't need coverage for that. And the fire department mobile radios, we did not have, and I know we talked about it at Budget Committee, we did not have the 64,000 in a capital outlay for those radios. So that has been put back in. He does have it in his capital reserve accounts. So that's those two items. So anybody have questions? And I think they have to vote on those, right? No questions?
Joe, do you have a question?
We have to. No, it's the bottom. We have to vote on both those items. The 64 was not left in there. We have to put that back in.
Right, we have to put that back
Okay.
in. It wasn't in the capital outlays.
And is it just selectmen have already voted on this? It's just budget now?
I don't think
No,
either
we-
has.
We have not voted on it.
We've not voted on these two.
Yeah, both Budget Committee and Select Board have to vote on these.
So we'll do that separately, I suppose.
So I'll ask my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen, is there a motion relative to these two items?
I move that we reduce police department overtime wages by $1,000 and increase capital outlays for fire department mobile radios by $64,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have
Okay.
our motion.
So for Budget Committee members, I guess I just want to give an opportunity for anyone to ask questions on those two. No questions? Any motions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Any seconds?
I'll second that.
All right, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to do you hit the other two? The bike
Okay, the
walk?
next two.
Okay, so on the bike walk improvements, there's $22,000 that's in the capital outlay portion of the budget. We have looked at our current year's budget and we can find the $10,000 for the 3 bike racks that were in the budget. So if the selectmen agreed to use the $10,000 from the current year budget, that request could be reduced down to 12,000. So to remind you all, Russ Moore is head of the New London Bike Walk Coalition. He submitted a request for $22,000. $10,000 is for bike racks and $12,000 for an engineering study. So before you tonight, the selectmen have asked me to look in the budget to see, could the bike racks be purchased in this budget and thereby not have to be put in the fiscal year 2024 budget?
So on this particular item, you may recall that Russ's presentation included the bike racks for the beach in the coming season as part of the program to get people to ride their bikes to the beach and have a safe place to store them while they're at the beach. And it seems to me to make sense if we have the money in this year's budget to do it now so that we can order them now so that we can have them at the beach this summer. It doesn't make a lot of sense, even if we wanted to put it in next year's budget, to wait until July, which is after the beach season will be gone for all intents and purposes in terms of ordering it. So I would move that we expend $10,000 from existing funds for the purchase of bike racks this year.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board of Selectmen approves.
Okay, so next,
So
$10,000.
can I go on with the $12,000? I would submit that we ask the bike coalition group to continue to seek private funds for at this point. We have a lot of engineering studies for other things that we are postponing due to priorities. And I think at this point, we should not entertain extending that money in the FY24 budget.
So is that a motion, Bill?
That's a motion.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Yep. So for budget committee members, any questions on the bike walk improvements? So we would just be voting on removing the $22,000, Joe.
That's it. That was my question.
Yep. Any thoughts, discussions? Anyone to make a motion?
So I'll make the motion. and Melissa has a.
I'm
I'm a little slow. Had to turn it on. I thought we were going to approve the 10, or the selectmen just approved the 10
from,
and disapproved the 12.
but the 10 is from this year's budget.
So
Okay, got it.
Hopefully, can I ask a question to clarify that? I still think if, and Lynn can help us with this, if we had approved 196,500 total for capital outlays in that category, I think for a housekeeping rule, do we have to reduce that by the 22,000 completely?
yeah, so now you want to, do you agree with the selectmen to remove the 10? And then do you agree with them not to fund the 12,000? So it's
Which would-
22,000.
Which would ultimately reduce that by 22. We don't need a separate one on the 22.
No,
So I'll make the motion to expend the $10,000 in unspent balance this year and reduce it by 12,000. Is that,
No, we.
You don't,
we don't
the
get to
selectmen are the
spend.
ones that are going to spend this
so
year's
we don't
budget.
need to make that motion. Just,
You don't need to make that motion. You need to make the motion to remove the 22,000.
well, that's what I thought. So it's the whole thing. The 22's got to come out of there. So the amended amount is, you need that, Lynn? Off the 196, 170.
Yeah,
174,
174.5.
Okay.
Yep.
Make a motion to reduce that total capital outlay by 22,000 for the bikes to an amended amount of 194.5, 174.5.
Any seconds? All those in favor?
aye.
Okay, so next we have the presentation you just heard from Maureen for an article for $12,000 waste reduction.
So I move that the sum of $12,000 be included in a warrant article with the fund to come from existing funds at the end of the fiscal year.
I'll second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the Board of Selectmen approve.
Any budget committee questions or discussions?
So explain this to me, please. All right, this is this year you're taking the money from?
No, so we're voting to
Okay.
have a warrant article for 24
Okay,
for $12,000.
okay, I got it. Thank you. I
Yep.
was dozing.
Any other discussions or questions? I'll make a motion to,
Hang on, I still do have a question, and I'm not as clear. I have the same question as you. It's the way I'm reading it is from the June 30th, 23. That's the current. It is the current budget. We're voting a warrant article to take it out of this current budget.
No, it's
we're-
gonna, I think the intent is to come on out of the it'll come out of the unreserved fund balance. So when the selectmen go to set the tax rate in October, there will be your budget will show $12,000 of revenue from the unreserved fund balance if this is approved.
So if it's coming from the
Unreserved fund balance,
it will not have an effect on the,
correct.
on our budgeting and our tax rate at this
Correct.
point.
So should we be voting this off then? Voting this down? I mean, this is the coming budget, right?
Right. The warrant article will read to come from the unreserved fund balance.
So it's really not coming from a budget.
Yeah.
It's coming off the balance sheet on the unreserved funds.
Yeah, we did this a few years ago, John. I'm trying to think, the money that we're going to donate to the state of New Hampshire for the park and ride, I believe, came from the unreserved fund balance. Does that sound right? Yeah. So
Correct.
That was
it's just another funding
$7,000.
source, $7,000, right? It's just another funding source. Warrant articles can be paid either by raising taxes. And in this case, it's not going to be paid by raising taxes. It's going to come from the unreserved fund balance.
I can also start to just why this way, the Waste Reduction Committee and the meetings I've sat in with them wanted this to be a warrant article so that they could get the sense of the town's support for this type of activity rather than simply burying it in the budget. And so this is the way you fund that approach. So this is really a transparency article.
So any motions? Any seconds? Melissa seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Who feel? Yeah. Do you want to, yeah.
Bill, would you like to come up and speak relative to the Whipple Buca renovation?
Thank you. This will continue our discussion from a couple of weeks ago. I want to thank you for relooking at the proposed or a proposal to add a warrant article to this effect. I note that I think 400,000 was sort of penciled in as a bookmark at the time, and we're here to fine tune that a little bit. So as requested, we've created two budgets with North Branch, the construction manager. Both budgets use the proposed tables that you proposed, Bill, the Han brand tables. The full scope budget comes to $847,500. The reduced scope budget stays at the 600 that was approved. The reduced scope budget removes the mechanical scope, including the related finished carpentry, equipment pads, and associated electrical, the wall insulation, because that goes in conjunction with the mechanical systems, changes the copper gutter inserts to aluminum with aluminum downspouts, removes the interior painting of doors and trim, removes the Bucher attic fire protection, and reduces the contingency accordingly. We received preliminary design information on the replacement of the cabinet heaters yesterday, and today at noon, I was able to consult a mechanical contractor friend and develop an installed price for the specified units of $20,000 to $25,000. So we'll use $25,000. I want to note that these heaters need wall insulation. There's not enough capacity there without it. So it can only be added back into the full scope budget or some intermediate thing in the middle. The difference between the full scope budget and the 600K budget is 250,000. If the selectmen decide tonight or another time to add the cost to replace the noisy cabinet heaters, then that would make it 275,000 that we're suggesting for the warrant. We have a contractor's walkthrough scheduled with North Branch for February 8th, after which they will obtain final pricing on all these pieces. And that will be in time for the town meeting. So if we need to adjust things a little bit at that point, we can do that. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Great, thanks, Phil. So, what's our pleasure at this point? I would suggest that we go ahead with the full budget. And as I have said before, finish the work relative to the town hall. I think it's good news that we could potentially replace the heaters, which is one of the problems relative to the sound. And I'm hoping that that will help with a lot of that. But I do believe that the insulation and the other items are critically important for going forward. So I would make a motion that we go with the enhanced budget piece, the 275, and seek a warrant relative to that. Bill?
Okay, do you want to see if I'm going to second that? I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Yep.
Not everybody was here the last meeting when this came up unexpectedly, and so I want to go back over where we were last meeting, please, and then clarify my position. So I went back and looked at the video of the discussion we had at our last meeting and the vote that we took regarding the possible warrant article for work at Whipple. And I was surprised at the time that this was not on the agenda. And so I was really not prepared to speak to it. And I don't think I fully thought through what I was saying. I think I stated at that meeting, if I listen to the video properly, that I was in favor of letting the voters have an opportunity to vote upon this, but that I was still not in favor of the actual additional appropriation. And then we took a vote. And as I review the video again, it's not clear what was being voted on then, although I now looked in the minutes written minutes that we got today. And I'm not clear yet whether or not we were voting at that time on placing the matter on the warrant or the content of the proposed article. And so I voted in opposition to it because I was opposed to the content. But if we were voting on placing the matter on the warrant, I would be in favor of that, but I will continue my opposition to the content of it. So I don't know how we articulate that in the proper place. But in addressing this issue of the content of the article, I have to continue to voice the opposition that I've had to this consistently for over the past year because of several things. First of all, I think the proposed cost of individual elements of the project are questionable. Phil will recognize my favorite one is the tables, but there are others. I'm still seriously concerned about the need for air conditioning in a 100-year-old building that rarely requires cooling. And the one instance that we can refer to when we had to cancel a meeting in Whipple because of the heat and come over here doesn't seem to me to be the basis for spending $100,000 to air condition a 100-year-old building that rarely requires cooling. And then as I look more closely at this, Phil, I'm really concerned about the significant contractor fees and allowances that continue to be layered on the actual project elements at the same percentages, even though the only change in scope relates to, quote, supply chain and materials cost inflation. So why are we adding 50% to the cost of every dollar of material that we buy when the only thing that's increased in cost is the material because of supply chain effects and inflation? So I'm very concerned that a large part of this proposed increase actually has to do with nothing more than fees, contingencies, et cetera. And then finally, I'm just concerned about the appropriateness of spending these sums of money at the same time that other priorities have been carefully scrutinized and not funded this year. So what I do support and clearly have in recent meetings is handling what we do undertake as a single project. And you and I have had that discussion, and I still believe we need to get to a single project here. I just disagree with the scope and content of the project. So Nancy, for clarification, if the last vote that I opposed was a vote to put this on the ballot for the purposes of transparency and to allow the voters to vote, I'd like to retake that vote and be in favor of that.
That was the purpose in my mind in terms of going to town meeting with the warrant, was to get the town's input finally, and not for this to be decided by 3 members of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so can I amend the previous motion, or can we withdraw that? And first of all, clarify this vote.
Withdraw it, don't we?
What do you want to do?
We'll just do another one. So
the vote that's currently on the table is to support $275,000 addition to the bond, right?
Correct.
But, and is that just to say that we support putting it on the warrant, or does that say we support the content of it? The wording is relatively important to me.
Well, we have to put it on the warrant. The content, we have turned it to Phil and to several others as the professionals. I don't want to sit here and nickel and dime the content. But I do believe, again, that we need to turn this over to the citizens to make the final decision on how far they want to go with Whipple Hall. Kim, I see you
Right, so
poised to
poised to speak, hit my button. So the warrant article, the selectmen have agreed to put it on the warrant, so it will appear there. The selectmen will also then have to take a vote, as will the budget committee, for any article that includes funds, whether you recommend or not recommend. So I think that would be an opportunity for Bill, if he does not recommend that the voters actually vote the funds, to say he doesn't recommend it.
Okay, so I will move that the selectmen put the article on the warrant for the purposes of allowing the voters to vote on it.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I'll second it, and now we can open it up to discussion. Go ahead, John. Push the button.
I think I'm always reluctant to spend money in this town. I'm probably the biggest skinflint the budget committee's ever seen. But I also I don't like leaving things undone. And this Whipple Hall thing seems like it drags on and on. So does the police station. But it'd be nice, since we've been sort of given some freedom because of the appraisal here, to go to and finish this project. Let's be able to check something off on our list here. And I'd really like to see it done. I would like to see the numbers come down. I mean, no doubt about it. But I don't want to see this stuff carried on forever. So.
Well, I think, John, that's the question that we're going to put to the taxpayers, and they're going to be the voters be allowed to make the decision. They're going to decide whether or not they want to stick with the $600,000 that was voted last year to complete this project, or if they want to add another $275,000 to deal with the increased costs due to inflation and supply chain matters and so on. And as I've said a couple of minutes ago, my opposition to the increase is I still don't think we need air conditioning. I think that's a luxury that we do not need. That's not finishing the project. It's saying that's not part of the project that needs to be done. I believe the committee needs to go back and explain to all of us why the fees for the contractor continue to go up at the same ratio, even though what the reason for the additional costs are principally related to the materials. And then third of all, I think we need to say, wait a minute, this isn't just because we're not going to buy land this year. We don't need to add this additional cost because we don't need these additional improvements. We can do a very nice job for $600,000. A year ago, I thought we could do a nice job for $300,000. I bow to the fact that we've had a number of intervening factors, but I don't think we need to build in the additional costs that are implied by the $275,000 here. It's just a difference of opinion, but and that's what makes a good democracy, is having a difference of opinion. I may be voted down on this again, but I will continue to have my opposition.
Phil?
Only that I and the committee would offer some kind of a working session, a committee meeting, whatever we want to call it, get North Branch up here and go through this thing line by line and let them defend their percentages. Everything costs more. I don't know how much it's going to cost me to get a bag of groceries at Hannaford's till I walk out the door now. So that's the environment we're living in. The contingency is absolutely necessary at this stage of the pricing exercise because they don't have final pricing from vendors yet.
Right.
So that will all be there before the town meeting. And if we're lucky and everybody's right and it comes down, then we can reduce it at the meeting. But more than happy before the town meeting or after, whatever's appropriate, to sit down and spend as much time as necessary.
Fair enough. And I think that's probably appropriate so that the voters have as much exposure to the details as a small number of us do.
Yep.
So I applaud going to the taxpayers with this. I just
I was
don't
talking
want
about
people to
coming to
think that I'm
this.
going to back away from where I started a year ago in terms of the scope of this project.
I'm leery that, well, we can have a taxpayer session if we need it, but it's really you all that I'd like to convince. And what I was proposing was a committee meeting that one or more selectmen, people from the budget committee, whoever ought to be there, come and we'll go through these numbers and let them defend them.
Right.
Hey,
Colin.
Go ahead, Colin.
Thank you. Listen, I think we need to separate the two issues. All right, one is, are we going to have a warrant on an article on the warrant? And I think I think the nods are saying, yes, we want to do that and put it in front of the citizens. And Kim, you might be able to better describe this than I am, but if we end up with 600,000 or 850,000, the way we draw down on that, we could prove to come out at 750,000 and not have to draw down the whole 850,000. So the town will have a flexibility as we get more clear with respect to the pricing and how we're managing the project and whether the contingencies are relevant to deal with that number as it comes along. So it's not like we're going to put the town to debt to $850,000. We're going to put the town debt up to that point, but we can get more efficient with it. So I think those are important variables that we could talk about at the town. But for today's meeting, it's, there could be difference of opinion on somebody might think that the noise in the Whipple Hall is too loud and we want to put a different heating system in. That then requires insulation. Someone may not want to have air conditioning. So that debate, I think, has to happen at the town meeting and let the town meeting and the town citizens decide what's important to them.
Right.
So just to clarify for budget committee members, so the voting on the warrant article, what's the amount in the article? Is there an amount, a total dollar amount to vote on for the citizens?
Well, at this point, it's 275,
275.
although Phil is still working the numbers.
Right, so that could increase. And then what's the term of the bond? Do we know that yet?
We find that out. The
10-year?
warrant, no, the warrant will leave that up to the selectmen. So they will check different banks, check the rates, and they make that decision. That's not part of the warrant article.
Right, but traditionally it's a 10-year bond, or have we done?
20.
No.
20?
20.
Okay, okay. So it's really spread out over, point I'm trying to make is it's spread out over a long period of time.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from budget? Go ahead, Lindsay.
I'm sorry, just a point of clarity so I can wrap my head around this. We're talking about contributing to improvement costs for Bucher, which is currently occupied by the police and recreation. And I understand that to the point of $275,000.
We're talking about Whipple Hall, the
Okay, well,
town hall.
Is the recreation department still utilizing that for camps and other purposes?
No camps.
Not camps,
We're
but
not running camps.
But the rec department does plan to have more activities, which would include the use of Whipple Hall in the summer. So I'm not going to get into the air conditioning discussion, but I would like to see air conditioning in there.
Well, I'm just going to state this. I grew up in the South, and when I moved here and looked at homes, none of them had air conditioning, and the realtor said, well, we don't need it, but 1 or 2 months of the year. And I said, well, we didn't need heat in the South, but we still had it in every single house. And I think if it improves the overall functionality of a public town building, then we need to capitalize on that sooner than later, because the need for air conditioning is not going to lessen over the next coming years, if I'm understanding science. So those are just my thoughts.
Do you guys need to finish your vote?
I
You
think
had,
I-
you had a second, but you didn't actually vote.
Correct, because we then went to questions. So we have a motion on the floor. There's a second. All those in favor?
This is the motion to put it on the warrant, correct?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Budget committee members, any motions? Any seconds? All right, all those in favor? Okay.
Okay.
Does it
think
mean
that comes up.
275?
I'm sorry, who's talking?
Phil,
Sorry.
275.
The motion was to put it on the warrant. Does that mean 275?
Yes.
275.
I'm just saying that for the record.
Right, yes.
And then at town meeting, it could change, as we discussed, up or
Understood.
down.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Kim?
Okay, so is there anything else we want to say about the capital outlay land acquisition? No,
What else can we say?
I don't know.
I-
Give
I
people the
think-
opportunity. Let 'em-
Just to go back to my formal statement at the beginning, if by chance between now and February 8th, Mr. Hogan were to come back to us and say, I've changed my mind, I'd like to sell it to the town for $150,000, then it could go back, and that will be the last gasp opportunity to do so. So at this point, I think the discussion we had with him on Monday was definitive enough to say that that's
A moot point.
a moot point, but nevertheless, we always want to leave hope springs eternal.
Okay.
Okay.
Joe?
Just along that line, and I'm a little confused only because Bill made a point that he was in favor of this article. I'm going back to the Whipple Hall, 275, right?
Got it.
We're all in favor of the article being on the warrant, all of us. But at what point, and so he can express that he's not in favor of the 275, do we have another vote that this is supported 3-0 by the selectmen or?
Yep.
or-
So once the selectmen prepare their warrant, they are going to vote on all of the money issues. Same as the budget committee. On February 8th, you will complete your budget and you'll vote whether you recommend or not, all of the articles.
Right.
And so you'll have an opportunity that night to say whether you all agree with this 275, whether some of you do, some of you don't.
Okay, so along that same line, we still have a $375,000 article for the Bewley land that's still hanging out there with the potential that Joe Hogan could change his mind and come back and say, all right, I'll take the 150, let's get it on the warrant. So then we need to have some discussion on how that warrant article is worded, or is that?
No, that'll be up to the selectmen. They'll word it. If it happens, if Mr. Hogan were to call and say he will sell it for 150, the selectmen have indicated that they're in favor of buying it at 150. They were in favor of 375 until they found out that it was appraised for 150. So the selectmen would put that before the budget committee on February 8th, and that they would tell you they're going to put that on the warrant for 150,000. You folks would then do the same thing that you're going to do with the 275, which is whether you recommend it or not. Maybe you all don't recommend it, maybe some do, some don't, but if the selectmen decide to put it on the warrant, it's going to be on the warrant.
Well, maybe I should have had this conversation back in the informational meeting from 6 to 6:30, but the point can be taken now that whatever the wording of that article is, the indication to me in sitting through a series of selectmen meetings, a series of informational meetings with exclusively just one selectman, was Bill, the chief, the lieutenant, that it's clear when the wording comes about that we're talking about just the police station. I want to keep us focused on that it's just the use of this land, the acquisition, what we thought was going to be for 375, and it may get put in front of the voters for 150, that the wording is specific enough, as was requested by the people involved that you reached out to, that it's just for a police station.
So Joe, in my comments, this written comments this evening, which I will give to the secretary to record, I say specifically a site for a new police facility. Okay.
Question. Just wanted to make sure is there something in statute or in written or in policy or state that says that the town can only acquire a piece of land at the appraised value or at the fair market value? So why can't the town acquire a piece of land for its fair market value instead of its assessed value?
The question is, what is fair market value? And one of the determinants of that is an appraisal.
Which may or may not be what the seller wishes to sell the property for.
Correct.
And that goes in the face of two things. Number one, the fact that we do need, and the people of this town have been quite assiduously stating that we need a new police station. And also the reasonableness of purchasing a land that is convenient and optimally located to have a police station. So I'm at a loss, both in member of the budget committee.
Can I make a
as
point of order?
Citizen, yes, sir.
Just,
Go
no, and the only reason I'm making the point of order is I just realizing when we were going to convene here and we thought we had all the budget members, we were still missing Lou. We apologize, we came to the table. But with that said, you may have missed out on the 6 to 6:30 portion of the meeting.
Yeah.
Where I think this was all addressed on why the selectmen chose not to put it on. So.
Yeah, I was filled in on it and
Okay.
I had some pressing issues. So I was, keeping up to speed, but I that's still my question. And I think that people should be able to vote the fact that we do have a pressing need for a particular piece of land, regardless at the assessed value or what the seller wishes to sell it for.
I believe, Lou, that the unanimous opinion of the Board of Selectmen on Monday was and continues to be that the difference between 375 and 150 is so great that it is not a topic that we believe the voters should have to deal with.
John Lewis, I've lived here 27 years. Actually, I'm sort of arguing the other side here, but I think Lou's point is really right dead on. You guys are thinking about spending like $10 million on the station, maybe 8 million, whatever. You're only talking about 100, 200,000 one way or the other on this piece of land. And the assessed value, these types of things in real estate, it's hard to say, and it's not easy to say what a property could be used for and therefore its value. If you guys really want the property, and it seems like you do, I would at least come back and say, hey, what about $250,000? You can make a counter offer. At least.
John, we obviously the reason we do these negotiations on property in non-public session, the statutes allow us to do so, and is because you are in a negotiation over somebody's feeling of value and so on, and you can feel quite certain that over the last X number of months, the selectmen have talked about all sorts of different possible values for this land. Mr. Hogan made it very clear to us on Monday that he'll accept $375,000 from somebody for this land.
Only off 200,000. Thinking of spending 10 million.
Should we?
Janet?
It's all right.
Wait,
You-
John.
You guys are thinking about spending 10 million.
John, we've discussed it. We've discussed it with Joe Hogan, the owner of the property, and none of us have any interest in going forward with a piece of property that he is asking way too much for. So we got the appraisal. We're going to accept the appraisal, and we feel that the best way forward is not to pursue this unless he comes down from his asking price. Okay?
Well, yeah, Janet, actually, for me, it's a good thing, but I mean,
Okay, thanks, John. So I think Lindsay and then John Wilson.
I'll be really quick. I understand and, respect Janet's response, and I have a feeling that she's actually trying, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but perhaps she's trying to protect the landowner and is, trying to gain the sales price at his current market value and not the town. So thank you guys for your due diligence.
John?
So I'm unclear right now. Will there be any warrant for 375,000?
No, there will
Okay,
not.
so that will be removed from the revenue sheet.
Correct.
So thank you.
Okay, so I think we're done then with this portion relative to the budget reconciliation.
Do we need to make a motion to adjourn? For the budget? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll see you on February 8th. In the meantime, we'll move forward with the rest of the agenda of the Board of Selectmen. Any public comments on any other item? Old business? Yeah, that's new business. So under new business, we have discussed trustee of trust fund analysis of 3 trust funds, Emery, Gay, and Lash. Joe, do you want to? I know, but do you want to come up and join us? Yes, as
So
the
let me,
resource
as
person.
Joe,
would you
as
like to
Joe
come up?
gets up here and gets his microphone, let me just say that this came about because as part of my review of the town's various trust funds this fall, I discovered that there were 3 trust funds that I never knew existed that talked about general town support as the use of the funds. And so I asked the town administrator what this was all about, and she said, go talk to the trustees. So I did, and Joe has done a lot of research work going back 47 years to tell us what we have in these 3 trust funds and what more work he has to do to determine what we can spend, when, and how.
I don't have it with me. Okay. Sure. Thanks.
There are 3 funds that were established starting back in 1974 and in the 80s that were basically 2 of them had to do with property that the town acquired and sold to people under different circumstances. One of them, for people's information, is the knotweed plot behind the telephone company. That was a separate private property that was taken over and sold in an auction. The third one was a gift of $5,000 from Colonel Lash in memory of his wife that to be put into trust for town use. All 3 funds were dedicated to support the general fund. They now have a balance total of about $75,000, of which about $45,000 is accumulated interest, which can be taken out to support the general fund. We're talking to Amy Nichols of the Charitable Trust Division of the Attorney General's Office as to the procedures if we wanted to collapse all 3 funds and put all the money into general funds. And we hope to have a path forward in about a month or so. So that's the story of that.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
So moving on, town administrators report.
Okay, the selectmen have been contacted by the town's new executive counselor, Cindy Warmington, who will be contacting you to meet at some point in the future. I'll be letting you know when she contacts us. She'd like to introduce herself and meet you. Today, the police chief, fire chief, planner, and public works director and I met with folks from Twin Pines, kind of looking at their preliminary plans, gave them some, I think, helpful input on what the town would look for in the Twin Pines project. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Committee meetings and reports.
I have a report from Adam with regard to the last planning board meeting. Colby Sawyer College was received an approval for an application to construct a new building for the nursing school. The new building will house classrooms, labs, and simulators for nursing students. The building will be located where Reicholt Hall formerly stood, adjacent to the Hogan Center. Also, the following zoning amendments will be presented to the town on the warrant. One of which is updating the sign ordinance to clarify the regulations of the institutional zones to include the theater district, adding electric vehicle charging station facilities as a use allowed by special exception in the commercial zone. This is the same as filling stations. Modifications to the wetland and shoreline overlays regarding the removal of invasive species, and 4 revisions for the workforce housing overlay district. There is an additional petition zoning amendment regarding conservation areas, nature, and hiking trails. That was from Adam.
Thank you, Janet. Bill, anything? Okay. Meeting minutes, approve the selectmen's minutes from January 5th, January 12th.
I had a chance to look at them. Have you, Janet?
No, I really haven't.
So let's.
Okay, then let's put it off to the next meeting. Okay, there's the litany of upcoming meetings and special events. What's not there is a citizens committee on Saturday, February 4th at 7:30 in the morning. And is there any other business to come before the board this evening? Hearing not, then we'll go into the approval of pay vouchers and permits, et cetera. Thank you for coming.